What's going on, everybody? I'm Rick Barrett. Welcome to the Barrett Breakdown, the show where we cut through the noise, we drop the talking points, and we have real conversations that actually matter. Now, you know me, I'm not here to play it safe. I'm here to ask questions that most people will avoid and give my guests the space to speak their truth, whether it's politics, whether it's culture, faith, freedom, pop culture. This show is about honest talk from real people who aren't afraid to challenge today's narrative. Now, speaking of which, today, my guest is somebody you're definitely going to want to hear from. His name is Paul List. He's been called the Tolkien code cracker by none other than Glenn Beck himself. We're going to dive into Tolkien, AI, and Catholicism, and much, much more. And believe me, by the end of this conversation, you're going to be thinking about a whole lot of things very, very differently. So sit back, grab a coffee, a smoke, whatever you'd like to, and get ready because the Barrett Breakdown is about to get started. And we are going to welcome tonight's guest, the one and only Paul List. Sir, thank you for being a guest here on the Barrett Breakdown. How are you, sir?
I'm good. In our 6 or 7 inches of fresh snow here in northern Vermont. Welcome to winter. It's a white Thanksgiving, I guess, going to be.
So for me, as a native New Englander, I'm originally from Rhode Island. I love that, because here in Texas, we're never going to see that stuff. So for me, it's great to hear, but it's also a little heartbreaking at the same time, but because we don't get snow, we just get freeze.
Yeah.
But hopefully you're nice and cozy and you're nice and warm up there. Those houses are ready to take that kind of heat.
Oh, yeah.
But once again, thank you for being with us. And so, Paul, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself to our audience and give them a little background on you and what led you to pursue Tolkien's work.
Well, I'll describe myself as very difficult. I'm self-employed.
It's the worst question. It's like
Yeah.
it's when somebody in an interview says, "Tell me a little bit about yourself," and you're going, I don't know."
Yeah, I don't get into. I'm not real big on biographies. I told my co-author to write my biography on the back of the book cover and make it as short and simple as possible, and he just came up with basically reads and rereads Aristotle in his spare time.
Yeah.
And Aquinas, and that was good enough for me. I've always been a lover of learning and understanding. Therefore, I did not get along very well in the public school system, and I hated it. I love to learn, but it was very obvious in the public system that there was no learning involved. It was just downloading programming. Even, in the 60s, late 60s and 70s when I was in school. And I just opted out. I mean, I graduated, but I put nothing. I mean, I did very well in sports, but that was the extent of my school interest, and also musical things. I played the viola and whatnot. So then I, life moved on, and then when I was about my mid 30s, I had a very, very, very profound out of body vision that God gave me, and it was profound. And but I wasn't surprised because I've always been very close. I've always known that I was supposed to do something. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I was supposed to do something. And then I got a chance to mentor who became later my co-author when he was in college, and he changed his life completely. He was an atheist, and he turned around and became Catholic, and actually became a Navy F-18 pilot. And then taught at the Naval Academy for a few years at the end of his military career. And then he helped me write the book. And without him, I would have never, I'd written essays and whatnot. I gave him the essays, and then we worked together diligently over a couple of years in chunks of time, maybe a weekend or a few days together. So, but we got the book out, and I've always been very, very interested in the Tolkien mythology, like a lot of people that love good literature and a great story. But I always knew, like most people, I think that there's something deeper here. There's just something going on that, nobody's really figured out. So I had given myself a scholastic education after that vision, because God put his hand on my shoulder and his and his holy foot right where it belonged, and put the fear of God in me to read. And I did, and I read a lot. I really wanted to understand what was going on in the world. And so I gave myself a really scholastic education, and scholasticism is, rooted in Aristotle and Augustine and the fathers, church fathers and doctors, and then of course to the apex with Aquinas. And then when I turned all this reading that I'd done and educating myself for about 25 years or so, I turned it to the Tolkien mythology, and it just opened up in front of me. It just flowered, like everything just fell into place as perfect as can be. And there's no denying it. Everything just lines up. It's a scholastic psychological saga that's going on. Middle Earth is actually the material brain, and all the characters and attributes, the scholastic attributes of psychology, are given character, from Gandalf to Frodo and Aragorn and the dwarves and everybody. And I can go through and explain who they are and what's actually going on. And it's really, really, it's very fascinating. If people thought the Tolkien mythology was beautiful at all before, once you read my book, it's just blowing people's heads off.
Which actually is if you wanted to just, I'll pause that for a second, because this is my fault. I actually didn't introduce the book that we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay.
Mount Doom, The Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed. And we're going to deep dive into this book as well with author Paul List here. And let me just, before I throw it back to you and you can continue your thought, it's no surprise that Tolkien himself was a scholar and an academic to be able to put things into such a detailed and well thought out manner.
Absolutely. Well, he had a real scholastic education, a brilliant man, and a wonderful imagination. And frankly, the most important thing was his faith. He was deeply Catholic, traditional Catholic. But he, of course, saw what was coming with Vatican II and whatnot. The attacks on the church and the modernists attacking the heart of the Western civilization, which is the traditional Latin Mass. They'd been attacking it for a long time. So he saw the writing on the wall, and he worked all that in. And he just wrote the mythology and said, "Oh, it doesn't mean anything. Don't try to make anything out of it. And by the way, I cordially dislike allegory." And people take that all kinds of strange ways, because I think most people really don't want the responsibility of really knowing what the mythology is about, because it's demanding. And I think that he knew that if he just wrote it, produced it, and cast it into the future, that in God's time, God would find somebody, select somebody as unworthy as I am. That's what happened. And to figure it out, and I did, and he knew that it would be right at the time to intersect with exactly what he designed it to intersect with, and that's artificial intelligence.
Yep. We're going to get into all that as well. I mean, that's a subject I've been following carefully for the last year, because and we'll get into this more. A lot of people are dismissive of it, and then there's people on the other end that are just like, it's going to be the apocalypse. So it's funny, interesting how you try to navigate through all of those types of things. And just real quick, I try to follow Tolkien a little bit. My wife and I, we do attend the traditional mass, but every once in a while we have to end up going to a Novus Ordo. And I follow the Tolkien approach of doing all the responses in Latin as loudly as I can to let everybody know to kind of like stay away.
Yeah. And I'm not shaking your hand.
Yep, I don't. I'll do the Our Father in English, but when they start shaking hands, I'll say the Pater Noster as loudly as I can, as kind of a stay away as loud. So
exactly. It's about being and receive on the tongue and kneel.
Yep, absolutely.
And absolutely. I have to be very blunt about my opinion of Vatican II as an absolute. It was an absolute open dumpster fire. And it was it a legitimate council? Sure, by all the rules and regulations. Was it a good council? No, it was dreadful. And the fruit is, the proof is in the fruit. And it did incredible damage to the Catholic faith. And the modernists just basically, they used the opportunity that Vatican I was never completely closed out because of the wars and whatnot that were going on. So they used that as an excuse. And literally what they did was they took the syllabus of errors from Pius IX and used it as their owner's manual, their roadmap then they used all these errors as positives.
Mm.
We see it now, and unfortunately, apostasy has reached the very top of the church, right up to the papacy. I
Yeah.
think Saint Paul, John Paul II, and Benedict both tried their best to straddle the divide that was coming, and then Bergoglio just was outright in your face an apostate and a heretic.
So
The Pope, was he the Pope? Sure. And
yeah,
Provost was just right following him.
I was
He's
actually
just
about to
slightly
ask
less,
you that
yeah,
follow up. What are your
he's just a
thoughts?
slightly less repulsive Bergoglio.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hopes of Pope Leo the 14th were they were dashed pretty quickly, and it's very interesting how he tries to appear to straddle the
Yeah.
line by doing the pater in Latin at the mass and the vestments and everything like that. But at the same time, I'm not a huge fan of Pope interviews. I think our Pope should just stick to writing encyclicals and kind of not do any media interactions, because every time they do, I don't have any hair. I actually had a full head of hair when Pope Francis became Pope.
Yeah.
But after a while, I was just like,
Pulling your hair out. Yeah.
kind of deal.
Yeah.
And it was really just the hair pulling up. Well, no, he didn't mean it that way. And so, and unfortunately, it seems like Pope Leo the 14th is kind of continuing that.
Oh, I don't know about kind of. He's right in line, right in, and
Yeah.
I think he's slipperier because he's not as repulsive looking, and he's not as outright yet anyway vindictive.
Mm.
So it's easier to like, and that makes him more dangerous. And we've been in this, referring to Augustine's great work, City of God, which unfortunately too many Catholics aren't familiar with. We've been going on with the contest between the earthly city and the city of God from the fall of the angels. And the modernists, these apostates that have taken the offices of the church, and they use their authority and they use obedience as a weapon. And they've also started very actively now using the mandatory retirement age that was put in place in Vatican II of 75 to weed out the traditionalists. Because if a real traditionalist, at 75 years old, they have to hand in their resignation, and it's up to the Pope to accept it or not. If you're a real traditionalist, you're retired right off the bat. And then he keeps his cronies around and his fellow modernists, apostates, and they're basically steering the Catholic Church straight in, full steam ahead, straight into the earthly city.
We're
And
seeing
at the
seeing a
expense
lot
of
of
the
that.
city of God. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to jump in here real quick. We're seeing a lot of that because you're talking about the struggle, and it pops into my head. We're seeing really that come to head in the Charlotte diocese. I mean, it seems like every week, the bishop who came in and he was asked about it, and he was very slippery when he came in about, oh, I'm not worried about this, and then he has just put the hammer on it as much as possible, and in almost a vindictive way, to the point now he wants to get rid of the altar rails, and he is absolutely the quintessential example of Vatican II in its purest form.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are shocked because of how swiftly he is moving, and how vindictive it almost seems like he's going against a very, especially in Charlotte, which is, now that we look back at it, Charlotte is still, there's a very large contingent of very, very devout Latin, of just holy Catholic people that are trying to follow ways, and to strike a blow against such a diocese was, I guess, very intentional, and it's very depressing to see in real time for those people up there.
They're more and more open now. They're not even hiding their vindictiveness or their hatred of the true Catholic faith. They promote everything as equal. I mean, like Francis and this whole thing, this religious relativism that he promoted. Like Leo just got done praying with Hindu and Islam, and they put a kneeling place in a prayer area in the Vatican for the Muslims, and it's the only religion that they will not tolerate is true Catholicism. They hate true Catholicism. I
only laugh to keep from crying on that one, because it's very true.
And unfortunately, people have become so conditioned to have obedience to the clergy, and certainly that's an important part of being Catholic, but we do not have to be obedient to the enemies of the church. Christ said, for instance, pray for your enemies. He didn't say pray for my enemies. Okay.
No.
And he didn't say pray for those people who persecute me and hate me. Okay. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I think that it's very dangerous and extremely naive and very counterproductive to keep pretending like we're supposed to be obedient to a person who is an open apostate and a heretic and a hater of the Catholic Church. And most of the curia and the papacy has been commandeered by the modernists. And, I have deep respect for the offices, but I can't bring myself to have deep respect for the people who are using those offices with the sole purpose to lead souls to hell and destroy the church. And that's exactly what they're doing. And Tolkien saw that coming.
Speaking of which, let's roll this back into the book that's we're here to talk about, which is Mount Doom, the Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed. It does sound like a very bold claim. Is what we're seeing with Vatican II part of this prophecy that you think Tolkien was talking about? Are we? And of course, you talked about it earlier, that the AI, just as a bolt, like a 10,000-foot view of the working title. What is the title representative of?
Well, it's a representative of his whole intent for his mythology. And I know it's a bold statement to say that I've figured it out and nobody else has, but it just happens to be true. I didn't certainly do it on my own. God provided for me because it was in God's time that it be revealed now. And it's a prophecy of where the Western world, because Arda, if you're familiar with the mythology at a deep level, including familiarity with all the events and the characters in the Silmarillion.
Let's say I'm not.
Okay. Middle Earth is the material brain. Everybody knows Middle Earth. That's where everything goes on in the destruction of the ring. Middle Earth is the material brain. It's laid out according to the old Victorian pseudoscience called phrenology, where they claim to know where different things were, different areas of the brain and the head were responsible for different attributes of the psychology. And so he used that as his map. He said, I very cleverly, very wisely started with a map, but he didn't start with a map of the world. He started with a map of this map of phrenology, and we show it in the book. And his Middle Earth is the material brain of the world that he calls and named Arda. And he uses words are very important to a philologist, of course. He used world, not in this world, and that's what everybody's gone astray from. He used it in the secondary etymological meaning, which is the lifetime of a man. It's his world. That's Tom's world, okay? Or that's Rick's world, or that's Paul's world. And we all have that essence, essentially how we perceive things and how we experience things, and to a large degree, and how we understand things. That's our world to us. The further it drifts from the truth and Christ, then the less real and the less valuable that world becomes. But the world is, he named Arda, and that's the character. So the whole mythology is about the generation of a single human soul, body and soul, a substantial unity, as Aquinas calls it. And then over time, it winds up becoming divided by Descartes' dualism. So the whole it's a psychological mythology. It's not about this world. Arda becomes a representative soul, person, human being, not a real person, but a representative of all of Christendom, all of Western Christendom. And at the time of the destruction of the ring, it has become transhuman. And it's got the microchip. And the microchip is the Tower of Barad-dûr in Mordor. And Mordor is back in the cerebellum, where the area they claimed was all fear and hate and crime, murder and all that stuff. That's Mordor. And the Tower of Barad-dûr is the microchip, and Sauron is artificial intelligence. And the eye of Sauron is right out of Alan Turing's 1936 paper, where he invented the digital computer on paper. The eye is looking for the One Ring, and the One Ring is binary code, the language of the machine. Go figure, that the world's greatest philologist would make the focal point and the whole focus and the danger on the language of the machine, and against the other language, the language of creation, which is the harmonic overtone series. So because art is made up of music, if you're familiar with the Silmarillion, Iluvatar gives the I newer, the angelic, which Thomas Aquinas called the intellects. So Tolkien names them the I knewers. I knew, isn't that that's
It's pretty
he's just
crafty.
really crafty, and so many things like that. Once you understand the mythology from a scholastic point of view, which was what Tolkien had, he had a very diligent scholastic education as an orphan child when his very holy martyred mother died for the faith and left him and his brother Hilary in the guardianship of Father Francis Morgan, who happened to be the personal secretary to John Henry Newman for 25 years. So Tolkien was really raised in the Birmingham Oratory as an altar server at the holy sacrifice of the Mass, likely every day. And it left a huge, deep impression on him. And of course, what left the most impression on him was the fact that his mother had found the faith and left Protestantism behind, which greatly irritated both sides of her family. Arthur, her husband, had died in South America, and she had 2 young children. She needed the support of both sides of her family, and she was denied unless she returned to Protestantism, and she didn't. And she basically died of a very treatable form of malnutrition, which wound up being a form of diabetes. But she died for the faith, and she left her children in the guardianship of Father Francis Morgan, because if they went back to their family, they would have become Protestants. Yeah. So that left a deep impression on J.R.R. Tolkien. And he was a brilliant man with a brilliant imagination and a wonderful education at the hands of the oratory there, where Belloc was a alumni. So that these are the type of people that he was influenced by and educated by. So he had go ahead, Rick.
No, finish your point. Finish your point.
So the reason
I'm fascinated, so please finish the point.
the reason that the mythology has never been seen for what it is, actually, is until now, is because nobody studies scholasticism anymore, not as a philosophical engine that drives your comprehension and your understanding and making connections. We've been so thoroughly infected by Descartes and the sophists and intellectual adolescence of the Enlightenment that we have been, but most people, 99% of the West has been completely polluted with this post-Reformation Enlightenment education that really started with Francis Bacon right out of the Reformation. And he wrote the guidebook and invented the new scientific method in his work, Novo Organum, which I've read twice, and I suggest people read it. And it really sparked the interest of Descartes. Descartes wrote it or read it 20 years after its publication. And then he wrote his Meditations, which are very revealing of his psychology and Bacon's influence on him. And then he went off and essentially sparked the Industrial Revolution, which is the age of the machine. And now at the end of the age of the machine comes into full confluence with a couple of things: the information age and also Darwinism, and has a huge effect on the modern psychology. And it leaves humanity in the West wide open to just dive headlong into transhumanism. And we're really at risk.
Yeah, that's all absolutely fascinating. We'll go with this. I'm not a scholar. My depth of Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings is the Peter Jackson movies and a little bit below that. So just to let you know what you're
dealing with.
Yeah, who you're playing paddleball with here.
That's okay.
It's like Forrest Gump playing like a 5-year-old. It's not really.
I'll make a quick statement about the movies. The first 3 movies, the original ones, were incredibly well done. The score was really good. The acting and the flavor, they got the flavor really well, the feel for the movie. But they changed so much and left out, of course, the most important characters of all. Unfortunately, they've been totally misunderstood. Tom Bombadil and Goldberry. The whole mythology is about their destiny. Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are the transmigrated fallen spirits of the trees of light, Telperion and Laurelin. And they were given bodies made by Aule, and he's the faculty of the soul of growth. He had made the dwarves way before that. So when the trees died, because they were killed by Ungoliant, which is mortal sin, and Melkor, who's Sauron's boss in the beginning, he's original sin. So the mind is darkened because the trees of light are the free will and the rational intellect. and they were in a state of grace when they were blossoming, and they were actually waxing and waning according to the circle of fifths, or the spiral of forces, I call it in the books, modulation, musical modulation. And the days represent, each hour represents one note of the chromatic scale of Western music. So Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are the fallen spirits of the trees of light, and they are the whole point of the whole mythology, as Tolkien said in the Ainu Lindale, the beautiful opening chapter of the whole mythology of the Silmarillion, where he says that they were the highest things that were made, the two trees of light, and it's about their destiny, that the whole age, the Eldar age, he calls it, is about. And they died very, very early in the mythology, so that doesn't make any sense. Well, they were given new bodies. He doesn't say that, but I obviously I figured it out. And so Tom and Goldberry are, and Tom is the rational will, the free will, and that's why he can do anything he wants. And Goldberry is the rational intellect and the conscience. And they decide, the will and the conscience decide at this state in Arda's life with the microchip, they decide they're going to change. They're going to get out. They're going to get rid of this, and they're going to become more human again and reclaim their humanity. So what do? They call out of the Shire. They call the habits, and hobbits are habits. And the four main hobbits that we know so well, Frodo, Sam, Pippin, and Merry, are the cardinal virtues. And temperance is Frodo. Fortitude is Sam.
Yeah.
And Pippin and Merry are from the outside. They're not from the Shire. They're from Tookville and Buckland.
Yeah.
And they're the exterior virtues of prudence and justice. And Tom and Goldberry call them out and feed them very well because they're appetitive virtues. Okay. Yeah. So Tolkien gives them a great appetite. They always want to eat. That's how, this is just another really funny thing that he does. So he calls them out, and they instruct Goldberry and Tom, the will and the rational intellect, instruct them, and then send them on a quest to destroy the ring. And so they get involved with the Fellowship, and the Fellowship are the fundamental agents of our psychology that are most involved in this. The wizards are the way in which man acquires knowledge, according to Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, and they are the wizards. And Gandalf is philosophical wisdom. Saruman is practical wisdom, who's taken over academia, because the Isengard, the Tower of Isengard, is the blackened ivory tower, and the halls of science are the mines of Moria, and because dwarves are scientific knowledge. So they have Gandalf, and they have Aragorn is high reason, and that's why he's the natural king of the rational soul, and that's why him and Gandalf are inseparable. Philosophical wisdom and high reason. High reason contemplates the eternal. And then they also have Boromir, who's from Gondor, and Gondor does represent in the psychology the place and the condition of the Catholic Church and the faith. And at the heart of that is the white tree, tree that can't be tended. It can't be tended, and it's the TLM. It's the Mass.
Okay, we're gonna definitely
the Mass.
We're definitely gonna get into that more.
So and then elves are faith.
Yep.
Men are reason. And the whole thing is a response to Leo the 13th's profound encyclical Aeterni Patris, recalls the West out, tries to call them out of the fallacies and the folly and the suicidal ideas of the Enlightenment, call them home, call them back to Aquinas. And it's all about the reunion of faith and reason, and Aragorn being high reason, the last of the high reason, the last of the true kings of the soul. And Arwen, who is Elrond's daughter, she's the last of the daughters of faith. And when they re-wed, that's finally the reunification of faith and reason, which brings Beren and Luthien, people that know the mythology, Beren and Luthien's heirs back together. And what do they find up in the hill on the mountainside, just where the snows are receding? They find a sapling of the white tree, and they take it and plant it back in Gondor.
That is
So
absolutely
the destruction of the ring. The one ring is binary code. That's the language of the machine. So the whole thing is about to destroy the language of the machine, because everything that our digital age, everything, whether it's virtual reality, artificial intelligence, the surveillance state, self-driving cars, digital money, you name it. Everything relies on ones and zeros, the language of the machine. It's the only thing the machine doesn't understand anything, but the only thing that it can operate with is on-off, very complicated on-off. Okay. So it's about doing away with the language of the machine and ultimately destroying the microchip and returning to Tom Bombadil and Goldberry's humanity. Art is humanity, and the rejoining of faith and reason that was broken and the divorced in the Enlightenment, and so that's in a nutshell. That's what's going on. But the hobbits are very critical because, of course, as Tom Bombadil, if you know the book, he can do anything he wants. In fact, make the ring disappear, but he can't get rid of it. It's in his life, and he can't get rid of it anymore. They can just, smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and the will says, "Well, I'm not smoking anymore." Well, yeah, tomorrow you're smoking again. So what do you have to do? You've got to develop new and better habits. So that's what the hobbits are. He calls the cardinal virtues out of the realm, the hobbits realm. Hobbits are habits, and sends them on a quest to be perfected. Now, against Frodo, of course, whose temperance is intemperance, and that's Gollum. Gollum is intemperance, and that's why Gollum calls Frodo master. Not because he has the ring. Frodo's the only one that can carry the ring, because the ring moderates and controls us, and we master ourselves to manage our appetites for pleasure, particularly lust. And Gollum wants that ring at all costs because he wants to slake his intemperate nature with whatever he could get from the computer. So Tolkien knew very well what was coming, and with his 3 days of training as a code cracker with the British government, the government code and cipher school to crack the Enigma machine of the Germans, he had trained there for 3 days with Alan Turing, the inventor of the computer, and he knew very well what Alan Turing they were going to do. They were just going to invent a more powerful machine than the Enigma machine, and he didn't want anything to do with that, so he got out. And he also understood that it wasn't about language. It was about pattern recognition, statistics, and probabilities. That's the realm of the mathematician and the statistician, not the realm of the philologist.
So all of just absolutely brilliant. You're sitting here with Mr. Paul List, the author of Mount Doom, the Lord of the Rings book that he's talking about with the prophecy of Tolkien revealed. And I feel like I'm being hit with a tsunami here of information because it's just, it's so deep,
It is.
especially when you start thinking about modern society, where we are modern. And people right now, if people always like to draw comparisons to Lord of the Rings and the turmoil that's happening right now and the joining of different groups and attempting to push back against either modernity or social media or whatever the case may be. But it's also very interesting when you talk about how we as humanity, through loss of actual academia, not the academia we have today, how it kind of programmed us to be more accepting and more dependent on machines. And this goes all the way back. People, and especially nowadays, people are talking about the fact, oh, people use ChatGPT for this and they use Gemini for that and all these AI models. But it really goes back to the invention of the computer and the mass distribution of the computer and any of these other outlets or technology. Think of the cell phone, think of anything that has made life more convenient. And one of my favorite little colloquialisms about convenience, every convenience gain is a skill lost. And we're seeing that more and more. And we have great organizations like the Catholic Land Movement, actually up your way in New York, that are trying to get Catholics back to the land. And we're seeing that kind of pop up. We're seeing despite the fact it's trying to be suppressed, the reignition and the devotion towards the true mass and all of these things. But also it goes more besides that spiritual battle that we're obviously having here, whether, how do we face off? There's also the academic battle. There's the cultural battle against AI and machines that we've been fighting since social media really came on the map in the early 2000s. And how that has it's a joke online now where people will say, oh, we were the last generation to have a normal childhood before social media came up. And there really is that dividing line, Mr. List, between people who didn't have a tablet in front of them, did not have an Instagram account when they were 5. And these, I have nieces and nephews that grew up with tablets in their face and going to school with computers. And so things, I was actually a teacher for 8 years in the public school system here in Texas.
Mm.
And the one of the public school system's great calling cards is always look at the technology that we have in the room.
Yeah.
And that was one of the ways to incentivize getting your kids out of even Catholic schools or homeschooling. Look at the technology we can give you. Look at these, and how technology has always been promoted as giving you a better life. And yet,
Nothing could be further from the truth.
I was about to say, we're soaked in technology right now.
Yeah.
We are as soaked. You can't get away from it. Whether your fridge talks to you or your washing machine watches how many steps you take in a day, everything is monitoring, telling you what to do, telling you what to think, and it is so far away from what humanity really should be, which is focused on God and the earth and each other. And this technology has destroyed us politically, it's destroyed us culturally, it's destroyed us spiritually. And Mount Doom talks about these kinds of things. If you want to take any of those that I or all of them and just run with it.
Well, when you said the machine, it offers this convenience, and it's one skill lost at a time. The thing let's go back to Augustine again, back to City of God. The reality of the earthly city persecuting the city of God. We'll just go right back to Cain, is the founder of the earthly city, and Abel, who he killed. I mean, so the persecution is real. And the henchmen of the earthly city are these technocrats, and they want their pleasure and their happiness in this world, and they have no place in their mind, in their heart, for any relationship with God. But the city of God puts our hope and our faith and our love in the hereafter, which means we certainly don't not care for here, but we don't have all of you become a very dangerous little person, very dangerous and Gollum-like, when you don't see the glory and the benefit and true joy. This is the thing. You can't get joy, not real joy in this world. You can get a certain amount of very ecstatic happiness. So
the dopamine
I
hit.
won the lottery. Wow,
Yeah.
look how happy I am. But you don't get joy like you get with real contemplative prayer and really developing a relationship, real filial fear, as it is, not servile fear, real filial fear, where you don't want to sin because you don't want to offend Christ or the Blessed Virgin or the Father or the Holy Spirit. You don't want to offend God. And that's what keeps you on the straight and narrow, because it's love. Because everything is rooted in charity. Charity is the love, and it's got to be our love for, and it's love between the Father and the Son. This is Aquinas, of course. Love between the Father and the Son that comes out of that is the Holy Spirit. And any love, quote unquote, that doesn't have that as its primary source are just varying degrees of animal affection or lust. And even for our children, maybe an animal affection, but if it's not rooted in, our love is not rooted in God's love between the Father and the Son, which is the origin and the true nature of charity. We don't do things for other people just because it's doing it for them because they're them. We do it because they are children of God, and God loves them too. And we show our love for God, show our love for Christ, the way we treat each other. But if we just do it because, it's the right thing to do because, he's a nice guy or he's in need, and it's not rooted in charity that way, then it's very lacking. I'm not saying it's not a good act, but it's very much lacking. The Western world has become incredibly intellectually and theologically stunted.
Yeah.
And very, very incompetent on so many levels. And it's largely, it's planned. It's been planned. A character that plays very large in Tolkien's mythology is John Dewey, who, anybody who's familiar with John Dewey in the early 20th century, he was a very second-rate philosopher, psychologist, come right out of my town here in Burlington, Vermont. And he became the president of the Teachers College at Columbia University, where he indoctrinated, his students, and they went out and spread the good news. He was a big fan of the Industrial Revolution and a big fan of Marxism, and he was a socialist. And Tolkien uses him as a character, and he is in the image. His image is Saruman, and Saruman has taken over academia, practical wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay, no longer philosophical wisdom. Philosophical wisdom has been pushed out, and he controls academia, Isengard and Moria, which are the halls of science, and the ivory tower, blackened ivory tower. So Tolkien was very aware of John Dewey. John Dewey destroyed the education system in the Western world. Did away he did away with Aquinas and Aristotle, and he just turned it into pure democracy. I mean, I've read all of his works, and they're scary. And experimental education, and basically treating kids like blank floppy disks or blank hard drives, where they're just to be downloaded.
Yeah.
And
well, we see that today. Only came out after 2020, when parents actually got to look at curriculums, and see what was actually being downloaded into their students, and then they saw how. And I did this. I had these battles back in the day when I was teaching.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
I would tell the last school I worked at, I would tell kids, listen, you don't have to go to college. You can do a trade. You can do things that, and I would have teachers almost fly in like they heard it, like they had a bell go off, and they would, no, you have to go to college. You have to do this. You have to do that. And I would tell them, no, you really don't. And that's only progressed now with the doctrine of, sexual orientation, and how that can be downloaded into these children to be whatever they want to be, and to do these they take these sponges, because that's academia and teachers, they love to talk about their students as sponges, right? They absorb all this knowledge, and it talks very much to what you were saying, and they use that to use their programming, to push their programming, so that can then be spread through generations.
Yeah, they're not absorbing knowledge. They're absorbing the program. They're absorbing the propaganda.
100%.
I think it was Stalin said, education is like a gun whose effect depends on whose hand it's in and who it's pointed at. And China's got its influence deep in academia by means of the money that they put in it. And China wishes nothing but the destruction of the Western world, and they're doing a pretty good job at it. And unfortunately, I was a kid too, and kids just have no wisdom. It's impossible for kids to have wisdom there unless God gives them, like, for instance, like a Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich or Catherine of Siena, or someone like that, an infused capacity. But let's face it, most kids don't. The man's brain doesn't fully develop until he's 24. The female's brain develops by about 23. So you don't even have a full organ of thought yet, and they've been indoctrinated. Of course, they have no ability for critical thought. I've never met a teacher yet that actually knew what the word education means etymologically. What does it mean? Never met one. They never know.
No, because it's been driven out of them.
Yeah, it has. But it means to lead out with authority. That's what it means. That's the etymological root meaning of the word. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, it used to be the authority of the church, and the end was the beatific vision for eternity with our Creator, the absolute perfection of our nature, to be reunited with our Creator. That used to be the goal of education. Not anymore. Now it's the goal of the state, and that end is to serve the state.
That's right.
At the expense of the church.
It replaced God with the state.
They have.
So, I mean, the first people that actually did maneuver it, they may have had an idea of what education was, but subsequent generations have lost it. But the initial, John Dewey and others, they knew that people's primary goal, we want to serve, right? The soul longs to serve God, and it wants a purpose, which is always these people who are atheists or who are lost. They serve government. They love government, regardless of its red or blue party. These people that are lost, they serve the government as their guardian, their God, or whatever the case may be. So it speaks to the fact that, yes, we have this desire to be with the ultimate good. The only problem is with technology, culture, everything, our version of good has been warped to material state, this world, city of man.
Exactly, the earthly city. And you mentioned the good and the perceived good. I mean, here's Aquinas again. The end of the will, what the will seeks as its end, is the good. Well, that might not be the highest good. That might be your next shot of Jack Daniels, or your next hit of heroin, or your next act of fornication or masturbation, or whatever. I mean, these are all perceived goods. They're not real goods. And the highest end and perfect end for the intellect is the truth. So when the intellect and the will align on the same subject, now you have wisdom, and that's the nature of what happens at the time of the calling out of the Shire, the habits. The will, Tom Bombadil and Goldberry have aligned in a common goal: the true good, the highest good, and the truth. Okay, and it's in my book how that plays out, and where that's really it's so beautiful. Tolkien's mythology is so beautiful, and it's so powerful, and it's in God's time that now it becomes revealed for what it is, and particularly to the Catholic world. I've done probably 80 interviews in the last 3 or 4 months, and a lot of them have been on Evangelical Patriot, which they're nice people, and you really kind of have to watch what I say. Because people ask me, well, what does Tolkien tell us, we have to do? Well, one of the things he's telling us we have to do is the reunification of Christendom. And it's not going to be one of these 75,000 Protestant, flavors of the day, and it's not going to be this synodal church that's eclipsing, the Catholic Church. It's going to have to be the true age-old traditional straight from the apostles through the doctors and fathers of the church, the saints and the martyrs. It's that Catholic Church, and it's the true sacrifice of the Mass. It's not turning to man and serving man in the Novus Ordo, and meanwhile we put the tabernacle over in the mop closet, and everybody just handles the Eucharist like it's a potato chip. This is all Protestantism. And it's going to have to come back where it's the true sacrifice of the Mass and the perpetuation of the sacrifice on the cross, where Jesus, the God-man, gives us the perfect sacrifice to the Father, his own flesh and blood. It doesn't go over very well on some of these. But I tell them the truth anyway, and because the truth is the truth, and it will set you free. But as long as if you're continually trapped in any one of the Protestant heresies, and they are heresies,
they are.
I'm not saying that they're bad people, but they have no familiarity. No Protestant has any true familiarity with Aquinas. Very little even with the doctors, other doctors and fathers, even Augustine, maybe some, but very, very, and the Eastern Orthodox have very little understanding or exposure to Aquinas because they went schism in the 10th century. Aquinas was the 13th century. So they never really got any of that either. So Christendom is really, really hurting. The Reformation was a real, seemingly mortal wound to Western Christendom, because half of the West stepped out willingly out from the shadow and the protection of the throne of God and walked right in to the deceptive light of the devil, and sparked the Industrial Revolution, the age of the machine. And now at the end of the age of the machine, man has made a machine in his own image.
It's
ugly. And it's going to be we've created our own chastisement. It's going to chastise us fiercely, and we need it.
Yeah, we did. Which is actually going to lead me. I'm going to put a coda on this one, and then we'll move into our next topic. My wife and I tend to call the strip mall churches the happy churches, because they are based on emotion. They are based on feeling good and emotion, and that's why people church hop. Oh, I was at the Church of the Three Crosses for a couple of weeks. Now I'm at the Church of the Climbing Rock, where they're much better. And once that emotional high, right, that endorphin rush you were talking about, that happiness purge, that little jump they get, they have to chase it because it's not rooted in truth. And the Ortho Bros, I love you guys, you're really great, but they're kind of like Protestantism with smells and bells. They don't want to hear that.
No, of course they don't.
The fact they kind of are.
And they've got the filioque is a big problem for them because they never studied Aquinas. They don't understand that, of course, the transcendentals, this is fundamental Aristotle. and the scholastics. The transcendentals that go beyond all being and beyond all of creation are, and that transcend the material realm. The fundamental principles are truth, goodness, and unity. A lot of people have made the mistake to say truth, goodness, and beauty. Beauty is not one of the transcendentals. I can explain how that fits in, and it's very much related to the transcendentals, but it's not. It's unity. So all being has to be true, okay, and it's being because it's created by God. So therefore, it is good. We can make it evil. For instance, Satan was Lucifer, the angel of light, until he, by his own free will, made of himself Satan.
Yep.
Okay. And then there's unity. The being has to be unified. It can't just be this indiscriminate, unidentifiable blob. Well, those are the essence of the Trinity. The Father is all good. The Son is all truth. And the unity is the love, the living love between them. And of course, proceeds from Father and the Son. It's not this hierarchical, almost Islamic understanding of this hierarchy in the Trinity. There's not any hierarchy in the Trinity. The Trinity is one being in three distinct persons, but they're not separate from each other. And that living love, as Aquinas, I figured this out on my own. And then when I read Aquinas, I was like, glad that I was in line with him, let me tell you. Yeah, that was a close one. But so I mean, it is. But without that, of course, you're going to be led into this error that, oh no, the Holy Spirit comes from the Father, doesn't come from the Son. Well, that's just childish.
Yeah.
Of course it comes from Father. It's their relationship. It's the love between Father and the Son. So of course it can't be just from the Father and you exclude the Son, because no, it's that relationship between them. And they're it's the same being. It's three distinct persons in one being. Simple being. Boy, do we suffer the serious consequences these days of just the pathetically incompetent and embarrassingly ignorant catechism that has come after Vatican II. Catechism these days is just an absolute insult to the intellect. And it's, I was a catechism teacher for about 6 months, and I wanted to catechize. I wanted to be part of the catechism of the older kids, the confirmation kids, because they're the most capable to actually start to use their reason. Well, I got fired because I taught my kids, I was teaching my kids the reason that the Catholic Church is against abortion. And I used reason. And of course, the 13-year-old little girls couldn't argue with me. They got all mad and went home and told mommy. And then mommy told the head of the catechism, person who's a modernist, and the old, very holy old priest told me I was right. I was totally right, but there was nothing he could do about it. He didn't have the strength to fight back against her. So I was out.
Yeah.
The state of catechism is just really, really, really wretched. It's just wretched.
It is. And I think we can connect it to this point that, and I talk every Catholic guest I have on here. This point always comes up, which is the crisis of masculinity in the church, to the fact that what you just said, because a lot of Catholic marriages, the wife is running the home, because one of my apostates is I'm the founder of the Armed Papist. I'm a firearms instructor. So my goal is to try and tell as many Catholics, hey, within the laws of self-defense, you're allowed to use firearms, because as long as it lines up, and I actually use Aquinas and I use Augustine regularly in those two things. It's really hard, Mr. List, to try and tell them, because a lot of guys would be like, oh, I gotta see what my wife says about that, or one of these, because my wife doesn't want a gun in the house, or one of these other kinds of things. And it's just like, okay, well, you're shirking your duties here, my friend, by delegating authority ultimately to your wife, and then the house is out of order. And then that extends to teaching the kids, the famous statistic, kids who follow their father to mass stay with the faith more than the mother, who can do everything right, take the kids to church every week, pray the rosary, do all these other kinds of things. But if the father is not there to shepherd that role, it ultimately just kind of the kids, they peter out on that. And so when you say that, I kind of laugh, because when my wife and I used to go to the Novus Ordo regularly before we reverted back to the TLM, I would always be so frustrated, because at the beginning of one of those masses, the women are always up on they're up on the altar. They're either looking at their thing or they're messing around with something. I'm like, it's not about you. Can you get off the altar, please? You can read you can do your little reading at home. You don't have to read it 5 seconds beforehand. So I just when you said that, I have to always get that point out that, men really need to stop worrying about everything else and really put their faith more focused up front, because you're seeing, like, anybody that is focused in the faith, oh, mommy, the head said this about abortion. The father should step in and be like, well, he's right. He's correct, instead of the mother getting mad about, you shouldn't tell her about her body or whatever, these other kinds of things. And it's just it's a whole crisis.
Well, there's and then we've got so many effeminate priests, and I'll tell you who has way more power than ought to be the case in many parishes is the church secretary.
100%. Just like the school system, if you think about it. School system's the same way.
Yeah, exactly. And, they played the whole, women's psychology is very different than a man's, obviously. And they need each other. They really, really do. They help to perfect each other. Any man who's not strong enough to be a man, I'm not talking about machismo. That's like feminism. That's polluted masculinity. Just like feminism is polluted femininity. And they both have a real woman is powerful in her own right. She has no desire to compete with the man. Okay. And the thing about an effeminate man is they become very unattractive even to the woman that demands them to be more effeminate and more pliable. Real women want a strong man, and they need a strong man. And the minute that they can be broken down and controlled, they lose their attraction.
Yep.
It might stay, that's one of the reasons I believe that the divorce rate, there's many reasons for it, but the divorce rate is so high is there's a real deficiency in true masculinity, which means that it's much more than just being big and strong and tough guy and whatever. No, it's about being the real head of the family, which means, you've got to work, you've got to provide, you also have to defend, but you also have a responsibility to continue to do manly things. For instance, educate yourself, read, do these things that require, I'm tired. I worked all day. I don't have the mental capacity to come home and read, but yet you'll sit in front of that darn television that's hypnotizing you and polluting your family and ultimately leading to your divorce. With a programming that's going on there, you'll sit there for 5-6 hours and do nothing, where, you should be reading. Read to your kids. Read, educate yourself and expand your mind. And because when you expand your wisdom, there's a certain amount of real attraction when a man has wisdom, and women can sense it. And it's a real powerful thing. Women too, wise women are very, very attracted. We're not attracted by idiocy.
No.
Unless you're an idiot, birds of a feather. If you're an idiot, I suppose you're attracted by another idiot, and you're threatened by someone who's truly competent and has a fair degree of wisdom and is also working to make that more and more and better and better and more capable and more competent. Competence appreciates competence in other people. Those that are incompetent are they're repelled by competent people. And women have a tendency, the women that are the feminists and whatever, I hope to see this go away sometime within my own lifetime, because the destruction of feminism to the family and to our society, and let's face it, the backbone of civilization is not the individual, it's the family.
It is.
That's the primary building block, is the family, not the individual. So we need to, if women, the return to true femininity, being comfortable with your own nature as a woman, is unfortunately very unpopular with the feminists, and they look down on it as if it's something to be ashamed of. There's no higher calling than motherhood.
No.
And there's no higher calling to a man than fatherhood, be that celibacy and fatherhood as a priest, or fatherhood and rearing and being the head of the family and producing children. But of course, the pleasures of the acts of sex have been so disconnected with the propagation of children and its rightful use. And it seems almost, oh, that's prudent. That's, that's just, overly scrupulous. Whatever. Well, no, it's not. It's actually, when you break those two apart, then it creates a vacuum where all kinds of evils fall in: birth control, abortion, divorce, all this stuff as a result of that void. You got to keep that natural connection, between the man and the woman, and their relationship centered around the procreation of children. Now, my wife and I are, in our 60s. I'm 64, she's 60, so chances of having children aren't really very good. And she's also in Arizona, right? And
that makes it even harder. So
right, so it makes it more difficult. But we don't, I don't, my point is, particularly in your child rearing days, and that's why, good traditional Catholic families that are able to have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And we should have a lot of kids, but not like Elon Musk wants us to have a lot of kids.
No,
illegitimate children. We don't need more illegitimate children. And we need good fathers, and we need good mothers, and we need a good father that's a real man, not a fake man. And we need a real mother that's a good woman, not a feminist.
Yep. Those are all amazing points. Paul List, the author of Mount Doom, The Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed, is with me right now. Just real quick, when you're talking about Elon Musk, I do want to get on. We have some other questions and other things to talk about here. But it's funny that Elon Musk and his love of IVF, and now the Republican Party's adaptation of that in response to dwindling population numbers, is one of the most. It's one of the saddest things. President Trump has actually signed an executive order to fast track IVF use to everybody by lowering the cost to entry. And it's, when I read this, I said, well, this is a way to turn the human race into an asexual being, because there will be, it's devoid of the act. It's devoid of, you don't need marriage. You don't need any of these things. Just the woman reproduces, just inseminate and so forth. And it's another way to buckle and destroy that baseline, that foundation of the family unit. So it's very interesting when you say that, because once again, it's technology trying to replace what God has created.
Right.
And speaking of technology, let's get to the big thing, the thing that everybody's worried about. And one of the things you really break down in this book, which is AI. Tolkien, being famously Catholic, his stark warning about the potential enslavements of AI, and the fact that we're seeing more and more, we're seeing things like Neuralink being introduced. We're seeing all of these things being presented as the next great thing. There's the worry that 2027 is a year, 2028 is a year. It depends on who you talk to. They all have different marks. Some people say 2030 down to 2027. The mass adaptation of AI, which will strip 45 to 50% of the population of work, which is meaning, like Aura at Labora. And what will that population do? Well, you got to give them UBI. Well, if you give them UBI, where are they going to find purpose? There's a whole cascading things of potential disaster scenarios. So what should Catholics, Christians, how should we prepare ourselves, and how does Tolkien address that, and what is the good news that he tries to find within that?
Well, the only way we can address that and fight back, first off, we cannot be afraid. The technocrats that want to enslave us, and they do, these are the henchmen and the heads of the earthly city, and all their secret societies, and all their mischief and evils that they want us to be very much afraid, because in fear we can be crippled into a form of paralysis where we won't stand up for ourselves, because we'll be afraid, and we'll feel hopeless, and we'll feel like, well, there's nothing I can do. I can't do anything. Well, you got to get your own house in order. It's kind of like Aquinas's or the order of love. We have to start with getting our own family and our own person, our own being competent, and we can do that through the practice of our faith, developing the cardinal virtues, developing good habits, staying away from bad habits, and stay away from pornography. In Tolkien's mythology, pornography is Shelob. Shelob is pornography. Gollum in Temperance leads Temperance and Frodo into pornography as a trap. And the only thing that saves them is the phial of Galadriel. And that is filial fear. That's why he uses phial, filial fear. And it's not servile fear. It's not like, oh, I don't want to watch this and do this pornography stuff because I don't want to burn in hell. Well, that's just a competing feeling. And the feeling of ecstasy, whatever you're doing in front of the computer, that's now. That's immediate. That's right now. Hell can wait in your mind. Oh, I'll give it up before I die. Whatever. That never has any ability to conquer pornography. The only thing it does is filial fear. And filial fear is the fear of offending Christ. And you don't do that because it's a deadly, deadly, repulsive offense against your relationship with your Savior. And with the co-redemptress, the Mary, Mother of God. So you don't do that. And that's the love that's rooted in charity. And that's love. And that's what will prevent you from, but you have to develop that. It's like any other loving relationship. It has to be developed and it has to be cultivated. So we have to cultivate our relationship with our faith, with Christ. We have to partake of the sacraments frequently, particularly confession. Okay, and don't go to communion with mortal sin on your soul. Just be willing to sit there and have people look at you. And most people shouldn't be going to confession anyway. I mean, going to communion anyway, because most people are not in a state of grace. I hate to say.
I mean, when I was, I famously say I had a bad catechism from the Northeast, as unfortunate. My 20s, bit of a hellraiser. And, as 20-year-olds and people in their 20s tend to do, and I was told it was okay. And, I did receive communion, and I know in states of mortal sin. And I only when I reverted back and I read Aquinas, when you find out when you take a communion in a state of mortal sin, I went, ooh, well, shucks, on that one.
Yeah.
So now
getting yourself, St. Paul and Augustine said the same thing.
So now I'll sit there every week. The only way I'll go is if I can go to confession immediately before Mass. That's the only way I can guarantee myself that I is in a best state of grace as possible. And I have no problem. Going months without going near the body of Christ. I will not do it because I already got I'm going to have to, during the 4 final things, I'm going to have to, account for that, even though I've been absolved through the grace of our Lord. I'm still going to have to account for it, but I am one to say, don't go up, stay there, and unfortunately, when I'm in the line, I'm seeing people, I'm like, oh, I really hope every one of these people that are receiving are not.
I keep my head down.
Yeah.
I don't watch.
No, you can't. You can't.
I just don't watch. It's not up to me. It's the only person that I can affect myself and my family. And I don't know if my halo's showing, but I was kind of I was an ex-Marine, and I never did. I never did anything terrible, but I mean, I skipped Mass plenty of times. I was in Okinawa, Japan for a year and a half. I don't think I went to Mass once, in my early 20s. And, but anyway, that's one of the things we can do is get right with our faith, practice, and take the medicine for our fallen nature and original sin is the sacramental church, the church and the sacraments. And it's not machines. As unfortunately, you read the Nouveau Organum, the new scientific method by Francis Bacon, and he comes right out and says towards the end that if we can, use these techniques and interrogate nature, and we can, it's all attributive. It's got nothing to do with essences. We can virtually make nature give us what we want, and we will largely mitigate the consequences of the fall of Adam and Eve. And and the scientific method has become this, the discovery of all these things and all the technology has been in large part to supplant the medicine from the church.
Yeah. Every bit of technology that is created, whatever it is in direct competition with the church. And that's all planned. That's absolutely planned in every way, shape, or form. The more, because it speaks to every bit of technology, despite the fact that it's being advertised as a way to, and it makes your life easier, which is going to make you more slothful, which is going to make you more inclined to go for the lesser good,
Yeah.
whatever that may be. Pick your technology, pick whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that people, Mr. Lee, they know this, and kind of what you're talking about before. Well, they can wait, they know it, but even if they know it, they kind of still say, well, I need this for people are amazing at rationalizing. They can rationalize away, oh, I need it now. I got to get this job done now. I got to get this project done now, or whatever the case may be, knowing that it's having a negative impact.
That's the one thing I think I quote in my book. The one respectable quote from Voltaire, of all people. He said, "Reason is the harlot of man's desire."
Yeah, it absolutely is. You can easily
rationalize anything.
Oh, I'm a master at it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I am too. Then we have to cultivate virtue. We have to cultivate virtues, and we can only do that by developing better habits. The virtues are the good habits, the highest virtues, the four, as Aquinas points out. In the first part, I could probably almost remember the book, the article, but anyway, it's not important. Are the highest, the cardinal virtues are the highest of the good habits, and we have to cultivate those, and we have to feed them. We have to feed them, and we feed that too. We feed it with the good literature and the good holy reading that we do. And in Tolkien's mythology, that's the eagles. The eagles serve Manwë. Manwë is the power of sight. Okay.
Okay.
The eagles serve Manwë, and the eagles are the good reading that we do. And against that are the spirits of defilement, which are the dragons, and the Nazgul, the flying beasts with the black riders on them. They are the destructive, evil things that we take in through our eyes. The dragons are the spirit of defilement. That might have been very, very counterproductive and degrading literature that we read.
Yeah.
And then in the Nazgul time, that's virtual reality. The Black Riders are the agents of virtual reality. That's why when you put on the ring, you enter their realm. They can see you and you can see them. So they are virtual reality. And people think, well, Tolkien didn't know anything about virtual reality back then. Well, it's not true, because virtual reality has been an idea since probably way before Plato. The question was called the question of continuity. The natural philosophers looked at the created world in motion and thought, well, is this one? Is it analog? Is it infinitely divisible? Or is it made up of a series, very infinite, indivisible points, which is essentially digital? And the point was they couldn't tell the difference. Your eyes, your ears, you can't tell the difference if those points are close enough together and well organized. You can't tell. You can't tell if that's a analog, natural, infinitely divisible, continuous thing, or if it's just made up of indivisible points.
Yeah.
So it's been around. It's been around forever, and now the devil's taken full advantage of the fact that we can't tell the difference, because we've invented the virtual realm. And you talked about the loss of meaning and the loss of jobs and all these things. It's going to create a huge catastrophe of despair.
Yeah.
In people, and what's going to be open and welcoming them into their arms to join with them is virtual reality in the machine. And of course, they're going to be told, well, you can just download your consciousness and live forever in the machine. It's directly contrary to the reality of God's creation. And there's going to be a lot of poor lost souls that are going to believe that that's true, because they're going to hear from their friends and family members who have already done it, which all the information is there. So they know, hey, Paul, Rick, come on in and join us. It's great. No hunger, no pain. You can do whatever you want. No consequences. It's the best. And of course, you're going to do it too, likely. And you're going to lay down and they'll give you the injection and your soul leaves the body and it ain't going in that machine. It's going straight to hell.
It's funny that people will scoff at that. Oh, I'll the famous Paul, Paul during the Passion, I'll never leave you, Lord. And so we kind of say, I'll never do that. But yet every day we see people leaving the faith. Oh, I'm leaving the faith because of the scandals, or I'm leaving the faith because of this. And I'm going to go join this denomination or that denomination. So it's going to be it's going to be ripe for people who are not rooted, like you said, in the cardinal virtues, in the faith, in Goes back to the catechism. All of these things are connected.
They
If that
sure are.
foundation, right, the foundation of rock and sand, right now, a lot of people are on a foundation of sand,
Yeah.
and just a little bit tipped to the left, a little bit tipped to the right, and they will fall into despair, especially if they have a loss of material, things that they base their life around. Oh, my house, my car, my technology, my this, my that, my second home, whatever the case may be. They lose those things, they will be more apt to do whatever it takes to reacquire those. Oh, I can reacquire my second house in this virtual space. Can reacquire all of my things, all of my goods in this virtual realm. And they, of course, will take the opportunity to, as the saying goes, live in the pod and eat the bugs and just let everything kind of go by the wayside,
Yeah.
because they will be, once again, as you said before, a pursuit of the lesser good, of the easy good. It's just easy. I just,
Yeah.
the government wants me to do is they'll take care of all these things. And so it's that problem and that potential disaster, as you said, of this mass, they called it a pandemic before, but it will be a true pandemic of despair
Yeah.
that most people are not really ready for.
No,
Uh,
they're not. They're empty. A lot of people, unfortunately, are empty, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, probably maybe people aren't going to like this, but I'm just going to say it anyway.
oh, do it.
Um, that's one of the things that brought on the in the late '90s and early 2000s and whatever, that brought on the acceptance of and the widespread uh, um, uh, prominence of tattoos, because it was something that you had on you and it makes you feel. And people, you ask people, I had a discussion with a young lady who was covered with tattoos and pierces and everything else, and she talked to me and she said, well, I noticed you don't have any tattoos. And I said, no. I said, I noticed you have a lot. Why do you have so many tattoos? She said, well, it's how I express myself. She says, well, how do you express yourself? I says, well, I use words.
Hmm.
She didn't like that. um, but there's a couple of things in my life that really brought me pain looking at civilization. One was the first time that I heard rap music. That really pierced my heart, because I knew, on a lot of levels, that was the end of any popular great modern music. That was the blending of the Eastern, or the European Western culture, and the African American rhythm and blues, funk,
Yeah.
jazz, these types of things, and they joined with the folk music and classical music too. And of course, and it made great. And I knew that was dead, because that would take away the whole black influence, and they'd go off into that realm. And it was also just absolute evil.
Yeah.
It was just, for the most part, it was just pornography and violence with a beat, and it was seductive, and it was clearly the language of hell. The other thing that really made me very angry and hurt really deeply was when the computer game came out, Mortal Kombat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I knew, this is just crazy. This is just a simulator for murderers,
Mm-hmm.
and to lose all sense of conscience and desensitize people.
Desensitization.
Desensitize people to the dignity of. And then the other thing with the dignity I saw in the oncoming of the popularity of tattoos was, we're desensitizing ourselves to the dignity of the human body, and that's a pagan practice.
Mm-hmm.
And we shouldn't be participating in that. And we should try to do the best we can to keep our bodies in a state of sanctification, and not pollute our bodies. I don't care if it's cross. I don't care if it's, I love Jesus or the Our Father or whatever. We don't do that to yourself. And because of course it does too. When you desensitize the body, then you don't have much of an argument when they want to put the barcode on your forearm, and you claim, no, I don't do that to myself. Oh, you're covered with tattoos already, so don't give me that crap. So and then there was a couple of other things too, but those three things were really, I remember, they were the type of things that I remember where I was, when I heard that or saw that or recognized that. And it was, because I just see how these things are just one chip away at our dignity, true dignity, and
Mm-hmm.
our rightful ownership. God owns us. I don't own me. God owns me, and then, you were saying before, I feel like the apostles, that left Christ or whatever, we watch, like, for instance, the Passion of the Christ, and you see the guys beating Jesus. You go, oh, I could never do that. How could these people be? Well, every time you receive the Eucharist in an unworthy state, in a state of mortal sin, you are abusing Christ's flesh, and you might as well be right there with that whip and that cane and beating him on the post.
I mean, yeah, and it really is it's a mind warp when you know that in the garden he saw all of it anyway.
He did, I know.
And it's just an absolute, when you're praying your sorrowful mysteries, and people kind of just wax, oh, the agony in the garden, and they start going into it. And if you actually take, and that's an example of a visual good, the Passion, because you can actually take that visual, and apply it while you're meditating, and it really sometimes it'll just knock you off your chair. When you're in a good state of meditation, you go, oh man, like he knew it, and yet he still did it. Even though, people are like, well, yes, well, of course that was a human nature of him, but he still took it all, and he saw it all, and yet he still did it all. And it's just, like I said, it's kind of mind blowing.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, I'm a huge Blessed Anne Catherine fan, and Blessed Anne Catherine plays a huge role in Tolkien's mythology. And I didn't have the room. The book was all over 1,200 pages, and we had to cut it in half, or we couldn't get a publisher. So it's 575 pages. But so I left a lot of that stuff. But maybe I'll write the sequel to it, and it'll include all the elements and all the references and influences of Blessed Anne Catherine.
Your own Silmarillion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Blessed Anne Catherine's Dolores Passions, which was basically what Mel Gibson used as, when he did the Passion movie. When you read her account and her visions of what Christ actually suffered, the Passion movie is kindergarten. Compared to what he actually suffered. And you realize, first time I read it, I thought, I think the worst probably suffering was the garden.
Yeah.
The garden was, oh my gosh, the garden, the suffering in the garden. Like you said, he knew who he was doing it for, these people that hated him and would betray him. And he saw all these modernist apostates that we have now. He saw them and what they're, and he knew them for who they were, and yet he did it anyway.
Yep. It's the ultimate act of masculinity. It's the greatest
act
of masculinity in the history of the world.
It really is. Another thing about Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich that I find so fascinating is she had the full Monty of the stigmata. She had the hands and the feet, the pierced side, the crown of thorns, and she had a double cross over her heart, where Christ's heart was pierced. Well, what was that other heart? What was the other cross for? It was for Mary.
Yep. Yeah, the seven sorrows.
So how dare these modernists claim that it's inappropriate to Mary's title? How dare they claim that she didn't cooperate and she was so necessary in our redemption?
It's interesting. When this dropped, I joked with a friend of mine because a saint that I have a very big attachment to is now Saint Bartolo Longo, all the way back to when he was blessed. And the key factor in him coming back was Mary. Without Mary and the Rosary, he commits suicide. He kills himself. And yet they canonized him as a saint, and then like a week later they're like, oh yeah, all the stuff she did, I don't know. So it's like, which horse are we riding here? Are we gonna elevate Bartolo Longo, Saint Bartolo Longo, because of his devotion to the Rosary and his love of the Holy Mother and the fact that she saved him from being a satanic priest, or are we gonna do this other thing? Like, that's kind of that's really a nice encapsulation of the confusion that we have within
confusion and ambiguity are and the lack of any understanding of the fundamental principles of logic, which are non-contradiction, excluded middle, and law of identity. And so when you read the great encyclical, the great popes like Leo XIII, Pius X, Pius IX, Benedict, even Benedict XVI he was a brilliant scholar, a great writer, and he cut his teeth. These guys all cut their teeth on Aquinas, for instance. But then you read Bergoglio and he goes, this guy is just an intellectual
Yeah.
gnat. And it's just it's full of confusion and contradiction,
Yeah.
and and violations of excluded middle, and that's where they play that excluded middle, because most people don't know the fundamental rules of logic, so they're fooled by it, and that's where they gain their foothold in the realm of ambiguity, and mesmerize people and confuse them. And you think, oh, well, I mean, that sounds right? I mean, they start off with something that's right in line with church teaching, and then they go right off the rails with ambiguity and contradiction, and the next thing they know, they're into full-blown material heresy.
And it's very much connected to a lot of the things you wrote in your book, Mount Doom, The Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed. Now I am curious here. When you first started connecting the dots, and you've mentioned this a little bit before, it's a two-part question, so take as much time as you need with it.
Okay.
Did you think you were researching, or did others see what you were seeing in that regard, if that makes sense as a question? And the second one is, how do you push back against Tolkien purists who think you're reading too much into it?
Well, they're not purists in the first place. They're not. I mean, they're all educated in the Cartesian Enlightenment age, and they've never even considered scholasticism. And so I've learned just to ignore them, because I mean, they in the first place, nobody's ever figured the mythology out, because they've never even figured out who Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are.
True.
So I mean, I lay that out as, here's my calling card. Tom Bombadil is the rational will. Goldberry is the rational intellect. They are the fallen spirits of the trees of light. And I show them how that happened. And then I also say, look at Goldberry's name. Goldberry gets her name from the last golden fruit from which the gold tree died, and the spirit was contained in the berry. It was the berry. The fruit was a berry. That's why she's Goldberry. Tom Bombadil gets his name from Christopher Tolkien's toy. So that's different. But so, I mean, these people, I just learned to just, like I said before, most people don't want the responsibility of knowing what the mythology is really about. They love it for its entertainment and escapism, but they don't want to hear the call of Tolkien telling them what has to happen. What has to happen is that we have to become saints, and Christendom has to reunite, and we have to push back against the henchmen of the earthly city that wants us nothing but here, and their weapon, their material weapon, is artificial intelligence and virtual reality.
It absolutely is, and I think a lot of people, and people are, a lot of people are getting like a quarter of the pie. If I'm making this out right, the danger of artificial intelligence is a pie, and a lot of people are, taking selections of it. Oh, the job market. Oh, the loneliness epidemic, and a lot of people are failing to connect the biggest part of the pie, which is what we've been talking about, which is the spiritual aspect, which is the foundation, the underlying of all these other things. And as long as we can't acknowledge the elephant in the room, if you will, that, hey, this is going to wreck all kinds of things spiritually, then everything else, as the saying goes, is just a toy. Because people are inventive enough. If you have UBI, you go do something. Oh, you know what, I'll go work in a garden. Or people will figure things out if they're rooted well enough in their virtues. But if they can't grasp the spiritual aspect of this, which Tolkien, the way I'm hearing it from you, is kind of hammering in a very soft way, which is, yes, I get it's an oxymoron, but it's the best way I can describe it. Softly hammering home the point of the dangers of modernity and artificial intelligence. And it's just, how do we get how can we get this message out to more people?
Well, I mean, I'm doing, it's funny, Rick, I got to tell you, I thought that, I figured it all out. It's all put together. Elise helped me craft everything, so it makes pretty good sense, and you can follow it pretty well. And it's undeniable. It's absolutely undeniable. Everything fits perfectly. Okay, so I didn't just make up this, I didn't just all of a sudden decide to make it a scholastic thing. It was a scholastic interpretation right from the get-go, because Tolkien said very clearly, he said his work was intentionally Catholic. He said that it's about the fall, which is the fall of Adam and Eve, original sin, mortality, specifically the fear of death, and the machine. And all I do is point out exactly where all these things are and how it all works. Now, if somebody doesn't have either the intellectual or spiritual fortitude to stand up and take it like a man, so to speak, that's not my problem. My problem is just to reveal the truth. And those that don't have the fortitude, the stomach for the truth, or the mind to actually understand what's going on, I mean, I can't help you. I mean, and I gotta. Sadly, the real reality is that the machine is going to devour a lot of souls. A lot of people are going to fall for this. They are falling for it, and it's going to. Ultimately, this is the contest between heaven and hell, and hell is going to have a mouthful. Heaven, on the other hand, I'm not sure. I mean, I could only do the best I can to try to make sure that I'm part of that. I'm going along on that track, and my family and the people that I love, and then to do the best I can to try to get the word out, that Tolkien is on our side. Tolkien is there for Christendom. Tolkien's there for the real Catholic faith. We've got him now right up front and center in this culture war for the soul of humanity. He's right here now, and there's no denying it with my book. And I thought people would be like, wow, this is great. I mean, everybody's going to jump on it, but people don't want to read.
No.
People just don't want to read. And it's a hefty book. I mean, it's very, very philosophical. And as Christopher Tolkien said, that his father's work was all about philosophy. I don't believe Christopher Tolkien had any idea how deep it really was. I think that J.R.R. hid even his intentions even from Christopher. And he hid it very well from the world. And that's why it's never been known for what it really is until now.
Indeed.
Yeah.
No, finish your point, sir.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you get the word out? I mean, this is great. This is great. I mean, I was on Glenn Beck a few weeks ago, and that was great. And Glenn Beck was blown away. And he says, I really think you've got it figured. I think you're absolutely right. I think you've cracked the code. And, that helped. And he's got, millions and millions of followers. And, but I need to get more. I need to get it out to the Catholic world. I mean, I'm tired of dealing with the people that are only halfway there. I really want to get it out to the Catholic world, and it's difficult. Just is. It's Catholic influencers are kind of they hang on to their territory and they don't want anybody. It's
a niche group.
Yeah.
That's good. They have good intentions, but they know what they say about good intentions and things like that.
Yeah.
Just real quick, Glenn Beck, I just want to ask that how, you're dealing with a man that he is he is apostate to the faith. He didn't leave to become a Mormon. So how does, your message, how do you relate it, and how do you, try to?
I just told him the truth, and I said, "What are the solutions? We have to cultivate virtue and become saints, and Christendom has to reunite, and it can't be one of the 75,000 cafeteria Protestant flavors of the month. It has to be, and it can't be this new synodal crap coming out of the Vatican." And he totally agreed with that.
Yeah.
He was laughing. He goes, "Yeah, right." So it has to. We have to return to the faith of our fathers, and the true faith and the true worship, the sacrifice. When we worship God according to his just deserts, and we can see this in scripture, whether it be the Israelites or whoever and the development of the Western world, when we give religion, which is our just due to our Creator. And there's only one religion. There's only one true religion, and that is the Catholic faith. Everything else, it's not a true religion. It can be defined as a religion, because as I define religion is the practice of our theology. So how we understand God directly determines how we practice our religion. That's why when you have the fullest understanding, or a very full understanding of the faith, you of course then migrate to the TLM, to the true sacrifice, because we understand what it is. And we also understand the deficiencies in the Novus Ordo, even though I'm not saying that the sacraments aren't valid, but it's when we worship truly give God his due, we can expect the blessings from God. And then when we don't do it, we can expect to be chastised. We can expect to suffer the consequences of our negligence. And we are very negligent right now. And
Oh,
if these modernists have anything to do with it, we'll be absolutely sealed in our negligence, and they'll wipe out the TLM completely.
well, it is the one true faith. I don't think they'll, again, with their best efforts, I don't think they ever can. There's obviously the SSPX and other institutions that will continue on. So I don't think the fire will never go out. And as people like to popularly say, that's as much as they try to suppress it, it's the one that's growing. No matter where you do it, it's the one that grows. So in the end, it will. According to
I
Trump's
totally
design,
agree.
it will win. It's just it's going to be a nasty fight to get there. But hey, we're built for. We are the church militant, so we should be prepared for those types of combats and not shy away with it, which goes back to having strong male leaders who do those kinds of things.
And we need some strong male leaders in the priesthood.
We do.
Not a bunch of James Martins. We don't need any more James Martins.
No, we don't. We don't.
We need to get them out.
Yeah, I preaching to the choir on that one.
I know.
Those are ones that it's very difficult to see the embracement of modernity and these people and being celebrated. But that goes along with all the things we talked about with modernity and the pursuit of the lesser good and all these other kinds of things that just go hand in hand, which is why we need to keep pushing the message and keep talking about it. I do have one more question before we go, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't think this was gonna be more than maybe an hour, but this has been an absolute gem and a treat. And Mr. List, I thank you for your time. My last question to you, I'm sure you've gotten this before, but if Tolkien was across the table from you today, you could ask him one question about the Lord of the Rings and the prophecy and all the things you've uncovered. And you only get one. I know people are like 1A. No, you only get one question. What's the question you ask him?
Nobody's ever asked me that. This is going to sound maybe.
Say it. It's whatever it is. Whatever.
It might even sound maybe kind of presumptuous, even arrogant. But I don't have any questions with the mythology because it all fits so perfectly within the scholastic domain that I understand it. I understand it down to the, there might be a character here or there that I might not, that I haven't paid attention to. But, somebody asked me, well, who's Glorfindel? Who's Glorfindel? Well, he's the spirit of humility. He's faith and humility. That's why he killed the Balrog. Balrogs are the spirits of pride. Yeah. And the one in Moria is the spirit of academic pride. Okay. And that's, but we could get into that. He actually, Durin's Bane, Durin is Darwin. And what happens is, this is psychological in college now. This is academia. Academic pride comes on with a sword. Balrogs don't have swords. That one did. And that was to directly counter Gandalf's sword, Glamdring, which is made by the elves, and that's faith. And that spirit of academic pride was coming for Arda's faith, like they always do. And what they use as their greatest weapon is Darwinism. And he pulls Gandalf philosophical wisdom down into the body to show him that he's just an animal. And then he comes up the spinal cord, which is the endless stare, and he pops out the eye and finally defeats the Balrog. He doesn't die. He comes back on the wings of the eagles because it's the good reading that he does. And what has he read? He's read Aquinas. And now he comes back as Gandalf the White, and he's a full Thomistic theologian, and that's why he's so powerful. And that's why he takes into his own possession the ultimate spirit of decisiveness, which is Shadowfax, the horse. He's no longer indecisive. He knows exactly what he has to do. He knows exactly where he has to be, and he needs to get there right now.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it is. So I don't know what I would ask him. I might ask him, when did you decide to change the end of your mythology from one of a cosmogonical nature to one of a psychological nature, and specifically, you changed the identity of Melkor, because in the beginning Melkor had more of a satanic devil. He was Satan early on in his development of mythology, but he made a change, and he had to, because it had become psychological. So Melkor took on the characterized original sin. Wow. And Melkor is original sin, not the devil, because and that might be interesting for me. to know. But if I was going to sit down with J.R.R. Tolkien, I probably wouldn't ask him much at all about the mythology. I'd be talking deeply with him about theology and whatnot. And I'd be drinking a big, tall stein of beer and smoking a pipe with him.
I was about to say you'd ask for a second round, right?
And eating bacon and saying prayers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sharing our faith.
That exactly. I mean, that's probably the best answer. It'd be like, yeah, we'll get another pint. How about that?
Exactly. And I'd be telling him how much I admire his mother. We dedicated the book to his mother, Mabel.
Real, yes, because without her,
without her martyrdom, we would never know J.R.R. Tolkien. Certainly not for what we've come to know, which is, I think he's the most important author in all of human history.
Oh, absolutely. And forgive me, I know it was the last question, but it's an interesting. I'm just now thinking about this. His mother, mirrors, not completely, because you can't mirror the Holy Mother completely, but her love for her children and the way she loves all of us, and that she's always, looking out for us the way that his mother looked out for him. It's a very beautiful parallel, if you will.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, the character Galadriel is so, I mean, all the characters are so interesting, but Galadriel at this point in Arda's life, when he's trying to overcome transhumanism and he's trying to reclaim his humanity and clean up his act and become a saint, Galadriel is the fifth. She represents the fifth commandment according to the book of Exodus, not Deuteronomy, the book of Exodus. And she is honor thy father and thy mother. And she is, her holy realm is the prayers for her mother praying for her wayward child. That's why Galadriel is so mystical. She's the prayers of the mother praying to the Virgin Mary to intercede for her child. And her child is Arda, within which Middle Earth is. It's just fascinating. It's just so beautiful. If you thought the mythology was beautiful before, after you read my book, By the Grace of God, and Elite, my co-author, Elite, because it wouldn't be a book without him actually putting it together from all my essays. It'll just blow your mind how beautiful it is, and you'll have a whole new level of respect and appreciation for Tolkien's mythology and Tolkien himself.
So, folks, I don't know what else to do to get you to go to readmountdoom.com and buy the book today. Go out and get it. Mount Doom, the Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed. We are just been so fortunate to have the author with us today, Mr. Paul List. I want to thank you for your time. Once again, we'll make sure that it's in the description where to get the book and so forth. Is there any way that they can contact you if they have questions about the book or anything like that?
Yeah, they can, on our website, they can leave a comment. Well, I'm usually pretty good about replying. And if you go to readmountdoom.com and order the book there, it includes shipping anywhere in the continent of the United States. And I'll sign the book for you and put it in the mail. You can also get it on Amazon. You can get it anybody who sells books online sells my book. It's got a 4.9 rating right now on Amazon, and that's only because one woman thought I was probably promoting polygenism with my explanation of Adam and Eve, which I certainly wasn't. I'm well within Pius XII's Humani Generis, but she obviously misunderstood. So she gave us a 3-star rating. And then one guy gave us a 5-star written review, but he only gave us 4 stars. So, but everybody else out of 51 reviews has, so 49 out of them have been 5-star. And the commentary, people are really, really appreciating the depth and finally, somebody's figured this out. This is what I've been waiting for, and it's true. And I got to tell you, Rick, I don't mind being here for 2 hours damn near with you, because it's been I don't get a chance to talk with real Catholics, all that. And that's not true. I mean, I've been, Michael Hitchborn's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. And
he's a friend of the show as well. He's a really good guy.
He really is. He's a real Catholic treasure. And I've been on some other, John Henry Weston. John Henry Weston interviewed me twice, and he was just mesmerized.
And met him as well. He's a great man. Yep. I've had the pleasure of meeting him as well. So
and a few other people too, Timothy Gordon and some other people too. But this was a very fun, very intimidating, unstructured interview. And if you want me back at any time in the future, I'd be happy to come back and talk with you some more.
You're an absolute treasure, Mr. List, and we appreciate you being with us. Once again, guys, go to readmountdoom.com. buy the book today. Don't go to Amazon. Go to rebounddoom.com and support him that way. We are so blessed to have you on here at the Barrett Breakdown, guys. We will talk to you soon. God bless and Viva Cristo Rey.